And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at a Euro game. This one from Z-Man Games. It was brought over not too long ago, but I guess I kind of got it a little bit late, so I'm a little bit behind. But this one is Bruxelles 1893. This is going to be a worker placement game for 2 to 5 people, but when you place your workers, you're not placing them for one purpose. You're not just placing them out to place an action. You're placing them out and you're bidding some money towards buying something, and you're also placing them out for area control. And in addition to that, of course, you're getting the action for placing them out on the board. And then there's another area you can place them where you could theoretically lose workers if you place too many. So there's all types of different options here. Real quick, why don't we just dive into the box, see how the game plays, and then we'll come back here at the end and we'll get my opinion of Brussels. So here you can see the components all set up for a 4-player game of Brussels, or Bruxelles, or whatever you want to call it. Now this is a worker placement game in which each worker you place really has 3 purposes. The way this game is going to work is that each player has a set of workers. They will have some building tiles over here on their board that look like this, and they tell you exactly how to build them. On the other side, they actually have the building themselves. And they are going to have basically a marker for various different things around the board. How many points they get for having majorities, how many of their cards they may activate based on a special action that they take, and victory points over here. So, essentially you've got it all set up, and how the game is going to work is that players are going to, starting with the first player, flip this first card over here, and this is the stock market card. It will tell you on here, based on the number of players you have, where you're going to be able to divide this Art Nouveau board up in order to show what actions will be available for the turn. So let's say we're playing a 4-player game. I will either divide it at 2-2 or at 3-3. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to look and see where those are at. So if we find 2-2, it would be right here, 2-2. Essentially, I would divide this like this, using the biggest area L'd off, and that would be these 9 spaces that are available for this round. If I wanted to do 3-3 instead, I would find 3-3, and I'd find that the biggest area, once you draw those lines, is down here, and these 9 spaces would be available instead. The first player makes that choice either way and decides which way this is going to be split up. In addition, you'll see up here that there's a number in here, money. It's 4 in this case. That is going to be how much you may earn by taking a specific action on the board here. So it kind of dictates how much money is going to be available by taking that action. After this, players are going to go into worker placement. They're going to be able to place out here on this board, as well as on the actions that are printed over here. Each of these actions does something different. When you place a worker, you must place at least 1 money under it from your supply, and that's going to be kind of a bid on obtaining these cards that are down here at the bottom. Whoever has the most money in each column at the end of the round, after everyone is passed, is going to get these cards. And if there's a tie, the players will both get the benefits of the card, but will not have the option of taking the card itself, which has its own reasons to have. So, you can place out here on this board, and each of these placements is going to do something different. The brown action here is going to let you take some of these cubes. These are building materials that you'll be using to build your buildings that I showed you earlier. You'll see they come in 3 different varieties, as well as a white one here, which is a Joker cube, but using these will essentially cost you victory points if you use the Joker cubes. When you place out on here and you place your money, you're going to be able to take 2 of those cubes in any combination you would like. When you place out on these pink ones here, you're going to be able to take pieces of art. And you'll see that I have a piece of art to start the game. It's green. And buying these pieces of art or collecting these pieces of art will allow you to sell them and get victory points using a different action. So when you take that action, you get to look at one, unless you've been the first player to pass in a previous round and collected some of these little tiles here. For each one of these extras, you get to look at another one, and then you'll keep one of them. So you'll look at the supply and you'll pick up one, take it and put it in your own area to be sold later. The next action here is going to be selling these pieces of art. When you sell a piece of art, you're going to be using this little market over here. Based on how many of these pieces of art you have, you may move this thing a number of times equal to the number of face-up pieces of art you have. So if I had 1 face-up, I could move this 1 in any direction I wanted to. Moving this, you'll see, has all of the different colors on it: pink, blue, green, and yellow, as well as black, which is a special piece of art you can obtain throughout the game. And moving this will change the values of it. So if I move this to the right, I would be increasing green by 1 or 2 in value for victory points and not changing the amount of money it's worth. However, if I move it up, I'm keeping the victory points the same, but increasing its dollar value. And then I could sell my green piece of art for 2 victory points and 4 money. So that's going to be how you sell art, and when you sell it, you'll place it up here, get the appropriate reward, And essentially this makes green unable to be sold until it's covered by some other color. So the two pieces of art here will dictate what cannot be sold until they're covered by some other type of piece of art. The blue action over on this side is going to be buying one of these cards that's down here. When you do so, you may pay the amount of money beneath them, and then you have a choice. Either you will buy the card, use its ability immediately, for example, this gets you 2 white cubes, or this will move you up on the architect track on your board, making your buildings worth more points at the end, or this one will give you 5 points. And you may take that action immediately, and then essentially discard the card from the game, or you may keep the card, tapping it or putting it sideways next to your board, showing that it's used for the round, get the benefit, and keep it to use in future rounds when it can be reactivated. However, at the end of the game, you will have to pay the cost of all of these workers, this one is 5 money, or you will lose 5 victory points per guy that you can't pay for at the end of the game. So you have to be wary of having enough money at the end of the game to afford all of your people. The next action over here is going to be building a building, and that is the last action available on this board. When you build a building, you're going to be paying for those buildings using the resources that I talked about earlier, and you're going to be building these buildings from your board. The first 2 of these buildings will cost you 2 resource units. The next 2 will cost you 3, and the last 2 will cost you 4. Resource units are dictated by this little tracker over here that looks like a clock, and it tells you what the units currently are. For right now, it is 1 blue cube and then either a black, a blue, or a brown. Now you may always substitute these white cubes, but they're not really great to use. So when I build using 2 resource units, I have to use 1 resource unit of one type and 1 resource unit of the other type. So a blue, and then either a blue, a brown, or a black. After you build, you're going to rotate this, and you have to rotate one of the 2 hands clockwise, making sure they never point at the same place. So now, it would be a black, and either a black, a blue, or a brown for 2 resource units. Once you get to the 3rd resource unit spot, or 3 resource units for the next 2 buildings, you have to spend 3 resource units. So it could be a black, then either a black, a blue, or a brown, and another black, blue, or brown, or 2 blacks, and a 3rd black, or whatever the case may be. You must always use at least 1 of each different type of resource unit. Sometimes you won't have an option, and you have to use 2 of the same resource unit when one of the hands is pointing at this black spot. Or sometimes it will be money that you have to spend. So in this scenario, if I had to spend 3 resource units, it could either be 2 black and 3 money, or 6 money and 1 black. When you build these buildings, you're going to take them and you're going to place them out onto the board over here. And you get to choose any one of the unoccupied spaces, meaning nobody's placed a worker on it. You'll place it there, and basically it's going to give you a benefit. Anytime somebody places on that spot, you will get a reward. Each of the different actions that you could possibly place on has a different award associated with it, but I'm not going to cover what they all are. Most of them give you points for having various things in your own supply area when another player places on them, be it victory points for having different pieces of art, or victory points based on how many of your people that you have in front of you, whatever the case may be. Each of these different areas will give you a different type of benefit when somebody else places on your built building. In addition, built buildings will be worth victory points at the end of the game, but remember, you have to build them from the bottom up. So you pay the resources, you're going to go ahead, and if you didn't use any of your white cubes, get 5 points. You will rotate this track over here, and you'll place the building out onto the board to be useful later for you. There are also action spaces available on the board over here. There are 4 of them. The first one will get you 3 white cubes. The second one will get you amount of money shown on the stock market card. The third one here will let you use any of the actions available on the board without needing a space to place on. And remember, you're limited to a certain area of this board because at the start of the round you're going to kind of cordon it off so you can only use certain parts. And the last one will allow you to use a number of your guys that are in front of you that you've purchased, the ones that you decided to keep, activating them and getting the rewards. You start with a guy that gets you 5 money. So, the number of guys you can use is equal to your position on this track. The higher up you go, the more of them you can use by placing a guy here. You can always place a worker here, and you don't have to place money with it. So when you do this, you get to take the action. Now, if you want to place there after someone else has done it, you need to place 2 workers, and then 3 workers, and so forth and so on. So it gets more and more expensive, and can cause you to lose a worker, because at the end of the round, if you have the most workers on this spot, you're going to lose one of them for that round, and you'll have to earn it back in some other way. So, basically, you're going to keep placing like this, putting your guys out here with some amount of money to kind of bid on these cards down at the bottom, taking the action, or placing out on the board until everyone decides to pass. Once everyone has decided to pass, you're going to look at each of these columns that is available currently, or you're going to see what player has bid the most money in that column. So if green had placed 4 money and blue had placed 2 money, it would go to green, and they would be able to get this card. Now, they're going to take this card and they're going to put it in front of them. If there's a tie, neither player will get the card, but they'll both get the benefit in the center. This is an advancement on this track over here, which will allow you to activate more of your guys by taking the appropriate action when you can. So, you get the card if you have a clear majority. If you don't have a clear majority, you just get the ability, and nobody gets the card. Same is true for this one, either moving up on this track over here, or moving up on another track, which will give you victory points for having majorities around each of these shields out on the board. These two are the same as the first one I showed you, and the last one is going to allow you to increase your architect track twice, which is going to make your buildings worth more points at the end of the game. So, you're going to go through, see if everybody has a clear majority on those cards, and dole them out appropriately, getting rid of ones where there's ties, but giving the ability out. After you've done that, you're going to find out who's the new first player, and that's going to depend based on these little figurines that are on the top of these cards. Whoever has the most of these figurines will become the new first player, either on cards that they purchased through bidding on them, or by passing first, gives you one of these little tokens that has two of the little figurines on it. So, whoever has the most of those will become the new first player. After that, everybody who got these cards has a choice. They can use them in one of two ways. They can either take the ability in the center, or they may tuck them underneath their board on the right-hand side here. And I'll just show you another player board to show you what happens there. At the end of the game, based on tucking these cards under here, you're going to get multipliers for different things. They're all printed here along the side. So for example, this one is for each guy that you currently have. Above 2, you're going to get 1 point. But if you have this card tucked in here, it's 2 points. This one's for each of your buildings that you have, 1 point, or 2. There's one for each work of art that you have, or 2 if you tuck cards under there, and for each 4 money you have. So you can kind of adjust your multipliers based on what you're doing throughout the game. After you've decided what to do with your cards, you're going to look and see what the majorities look like out on the board. So let's say that players had placed out like this, and let's put a green worker out here. Each one of these shields that has 4 guys around it, in this scenario right here, 2 red, a green, and an orange, you're going to resolve for majority. Red clearly has a majority on this shield. But if we put this down here, we'll see red has a majority on this shield, but orange will have the majority down here. Based on where their marker is on this track, they're going to get a number of victory points equal to their number on this track for having clear majorities. If there's a tie, there's going to be a split, while each player is going to get the majority, and they'll score those points on this track here. So you'll resolve all of those that have 4 workers around them. Finally, whoever has placed the most workers in these actions on this board is going to lose a worker. It's going to go into this central area, and they'll have to earn it back somehow, which is going to be an option on some of these cards when you decide to get them. So, if you placed a lot of workers out on these actions which are not available on this board, you're going to lose a worker temporarily until you can earn it back. After you've done that, you're essentially going to reset this board. All of these cards are going to come off if they're left over. You'll refill them. The card, if it's still in the 0 spot, will come off, and these will slide and refill. And essentially, you're going to discard this card and start another round with the first player. And they will decide which area of this board is now available. We have 4 players. It's either going to be 2-2 or 3-3, much like it is right now, cordoning off the area and trying to figure out what's going on. So everyone will retrieve their workers, and you'll start over with another round. After 5 rounds, you're going to get points based on what you've earned throughout the game, the points for your architect track and how many buildings you've built, and various other things throughout the game, and whoever manages to have the most points at the end of 5 rounds will be the winner. Wow, just wow, that is an excellent game. One of my favorite, if not my favorite, from 2013. And by a new designer nonetheless. The artwork is something of a rehash in my opinion. I think it's by the same people that did Trois not too long ago. I believe that was a couple years back. The artwork, if you look at it, is very reminiscent of that. And I like the style, so I think that's okay. It does remind me of that game quite a bit. Now, the gameplay doesn't really remind me of anything. The fact that you're using those workers for 3 different purposes when you place them, I think, is nice and a unique feel. It gives you a lot of options and a lot of stuff to think about when you're placing them out there. The fact that you can build over spaces on the board, leaving that action there, but then benefiting from it can kind of play out to your advantage or disadvantage sometimes if people are trying to exclude you from having those actions available when they're the first player and get to choose how to cordon off that board. They can actually work directly against you by cutting your buildings out if it works out that way. So the combination of the fact that you're using these workers for 3 different things makes it feel really unique. The fact that you're able to move around and sell different pieces of art. You're able to upgrade your ways to score points for the end of the game and kind of direct your way of play is very interesting, one that I enjoy quite a bit. So if you're looking for something that doesn't really have the same worker placement type of feel, but uses a lot of mechanisms that you're already very familiar with, especially if you're an avid Eurogamer, I think that Brussels is going to be a game that you're going to enjoy immensely. If you aren't looking for one that's going to have you thinking, how can I most optimally use my worker every time? Maybe you want one that, a game that's going to give you options, but there's not always going to be an optimal play. It's not going to be a brain burner. I don't know if Brussels is going to be for you. Brussels is going to require you to really think about, if I place this worker here, how much money can I afford to bid on this card? Do I really need the card? Would I rather just tie with somebody, get the benefit of the card, and prevent them from getting it? If I do this action, is somebody else going to block me by building a building here, forcing me to give them a bonus if I do want to take the action later? Just all types of different things you're going to have to think about, and all things that are going to slow down players with AP. Now, that said, I still think you should give it a try. It's a great game, one that I would recommend to anybody who has tastes similar to mine or loves a good Euro game. That is Brussels from Z-Man Games.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.